If we wish to speak rightly about sleep and waking, we must first tear ourselves away from the modern habit of treating them as merely physiological alternations, an on and off switch for the brain. Spiritual science points to something far more intimate. Sleep and waking are the daily rhythm by which the human being learns again and again to become human. In waking life, we are inserted into the world through the senses. In sleep, we are released from the body, in order that soul and spirit may restore what waking consciousness continually consumes. The alternation is not accidental. It is a law of life, like breathing, but enacted on the stage of the whole human being. To ordinary observation, the astral body disappears in sleep. The physical body and etheric body remain together, bound to the forces of growth, preservation, and organic continuity. But the astral body and the I, that which carries our inner experience and our selfhood, no longer dwell in the body in the same way. They loosen themselves from the physical etheric organization. And here we must be precise in the Steinerian sense. It is not simply that the astral body goes out. Rather, a different relationship arises. For the head organization and the organs of waking perception, the I and astral body withdraw strongly. For the metabolic and circulatory organization, they work in another mode, more pervading, more from within, yet no longer in the same daylight manner. Sleep is therefore not a uniform condition. It is a differentiated state in which the human being stands in a changed relationship to their own organism. Why must this happen? Because waking consciousness is not free. It is purchased at a cost. Every perception, every act of thinking, bound to the senses, every emotional reaction to the day's impressions works as a subtle consuming fire within the organism. The human being is, in waking life, perpetually expending forces. We are alive and awake, but precisely through this aliveness, we disturb and wear down the bodily instrument. This is why fatigue is not merely a lack of energy. It is a message. The soul has been too long bound to the body in a certain way, and the body asks for release. In sleep, the role of the astral body changes. During the day, it is chiefly a receiver and transmitter. It carries impressions into us, and through these impressions, the physical organism is continually shaken, disordered, and consumed. But at night, the astral body becomes active in another sense. It works not outwardly, not as a mirror for the world, but inwardly and ordering. It takes what the day has thrown into chaos through the countless collisions of sensory life, and it transforms this into harmony. It reestablishes proportion, smooths dissonance, restores form. The human being cannot remain awake without becoming inwardly disordered, and the human being cannot become inwardly ordered again without becoming, in the ordinary sense, unconscious. Here lies a deep paradox. The very condition for our daylight clarity is a nightly darkness. The human being, as presently constituted, cannot simultaneously carry out this restorative ordering and also be awake to the spiritual environment in which the astral body lives at night. If the astral body is occupied with rebuilding, it is not free for spiritual perception, and yet this rebuilding is indispensable. The human being must therefore swing like a pendulum between being bound to the body and being released from it. After a time of working within physical and etheric bodies, the I and astral body must unfold their activity body-free in a soul-spiritual surrounding, just as the pendulum must swing to the other side once it has reached one extreme. Sleep and waking are the pendulum swing of human existence. This is why these rhythms are essential not only for health, but for soul development. In waking life, we gather experience. In sleep, we digest it, not merely in the physical sense, but in the soul sense. What we call life would become a mere accumulation of impressions if it were not rhythmically transformed. Sleep is the great hidden workshop where impressions become capacities, where experience becomes inner form. And waking is the stage where this inner form is tested and renewed through encounter with the world. If we grasp this, we begin to sense that sleep is not a passive lapse, but an active cosmic relationship. The human being is led each night back toward spiritual reality, not as a mystical exception, but as a lawful necessity. And each morning, the human being is returned to the body, not as a punishment, but as the very arena in which freedom can ripen. In the next part, we will look more closely at what it means that the eye and astral body withdraw from the bodily instrument, and why this withdrawal, rightly understood, is one of the deepest foundations of learning, memory, and inner equilibrium. When we follow more precisely what occurs as the human being falls asleep and awakens, Steiner draws our attention to a subtle but decisive fact. The I and astral body do not simply leave the physical and etheric bodies as one might leave a room. Rather, their mode of activity changes. In waking life, the I and astral body are intensely engaged with the nerve sense system. They light up the sensory impressions, organize thinking, and give rise to conscious feeling. This engagement allows clarity, but it also imposes strain. The nervous system is continually forced into forms it cannot maintain by itself. As sleep approaches, this engagement loosens. The astral body gradually releases its grip on the nerve sense organization. Thinking becomes dreamlike. Images dissolve, and consciousness dims. What is withdrawing here is not the soul as such, but the soul's daytime mode of functioning. The I and astral body cease to press upon the nerves and senses, and this release is what allows the physical and etheric bodies to begin their own restorative work. Steiner emphasizes that the etheric body, left undisturbed by conscious activity, can then rebuild what was consumed during the day. Growth, repair, and rhythmic regulation belong to its proper domain. At the same time, the astral body is not inactive. It does not sink into nothingness. Rather, freed from the constraints of sensory perception, it enters a different sphere of experience. Yet this experience is not normally brought back into waking consciousness, because the astral body is occupied with ordering and harmonizing the bodily organism. Only when this ordering work is incomplete, when impressions of the day are too strong or the organism is overburdened, do fragments of astral activity appear in dreams. Dreams, in Steiner's view, are not revelations of a higher world, but signs that the astral body has not been able to complete its nightly task without interference. This understanding sheds light on the nature of memory and learning. In waking life, impressions are received, but they do not immediately become part of the human being. They remain, as it were, external deposits. It is during sleep that these deposits are worked into the etheric body and transformed into enduring capacities. What is learned during the day becomes inwardly assimilated at night. Without sleep, impressions remain superficial. Steiner therefore insists that true education does not consist in accumulation of information, but in the rhythmic alternation of receiving and inwardly processing. Learning that is not followed by sufficient sleep does not truly become human possession. Awakening, then, is not a simple return to the previous state. Each morning, the I and astral body take up the bodily instrument anew. This re-entry is never entirely identical to the day before. The organism has been subtly reshaped by the night's work. The etheric body has restored forces, but also transformed them. Thus, awakening carries with it the possibility of renewal. One could say that each morning the human being is offered the chance to become slightly different, to meet the world with capacities that did not exist before. Steiner often points out that modern life interferes with this delicate process. Artificial lighting, irregular schedules, and constant mental stimulation prevent the astral body from withdrawing properly. The eye remains half bound to the nervous system even at night. As a result, the etheric body cannot fully rebuild, and the astral body cannot fully order. The consequence is not merely tiredness, but a deep inner restlessness. The human being awakens without having truly slept and goes through the day without having truly awakened. This condition has profound consequences for the soul. When the rhythm between sleep and waking is disturbed, thinking becomes brittle, feeling becomes unstable, and willing loses depth. The human being may remain outwardly active, but inwardly they lose the capacity to let experience ripen. Steiner sees in this disturbance one of the roots of modern nervousness and anxiety. The soul no longer finds its proper breathing between immersion in the world and retreat into itself. Thus, sleep and waking are not opposite states, but complementary phases of a single life process. One prepares the other. Sleep gives depth to waking. Waking gives content to sleep. When this rhythm is respected, the human being can gradually develop inner equilibrium. When it is violated, the soul becomes either overstimulated or depleted. In the next part, we will look more closely at how this rhythm is connected with moral development, freedom, and the awakening of the I in modern humanity. To understand why sleep and waking are not only biological necessities, but also moral and spiritual foundations, we must look more closely at the role of the I in this rhythm. Steiner shows that the human I does not act continuously in the same way. In waking life, it is bound to the bodily instrument, especially to the head organization. Through this binding, the I gains clarity and self-awareness, but at the same time, it becomes limited. It can only work within the structures that the body allows. True freedom cannot arise here alone, because the I is constantly being shaped by sensory impressions and habitual reactions. During sleep, this binding is loosened. The I is no longer compelled to react to the outer world. It is withdrawn from the immediate pressure of perception. In this withdrawal lies a profound possibility. The I is placed, if only for a time, into a realm where it is not determined by sense impressions. Although this realm is normally unconscious, it nevertheless works deeply into the human being. Steiner suggests that the forces through which the I gradually strengthens itself, forces of moral intuition and inner orientation, are nourished in this nightly withdrawal. This sheds light on the relationship between sleep and conscience. Conscience does not arise from external instruction alone. It arises when the I learns to listen to itself beyond the noise of impressions. Sleep creates the conditions for this listening, even if we do not remember it. A life deprived of true sleep deprives the I of the opportunity to gather itself. Over time, this leads to a weakening of moral discernment. Decisions become reactive rather than inwardly grounded. Steiner connects this insight with the broader evolution of humanity. In earlier epochs, the human being was guided by instinctive spiritual forces. The rhythm of sleep and waking was more naturally protected by life circumstances. In modern times, this protection has largely vanished. The human being must now consciously safeguard the conditions under which the I can withdraw and return. Sleep becomes a moral task, not in the sense of discipline or regulation, but in the sense of responsibility for one's inner life. The Michaelic age intensifies this task. Steiner describes this epoch as one in which thinking itself must become moral. But thinking cannot become moral if it remains trapped in constant sensory engagement. It requires intervals of release. Sleep, in this context, is not an escape from responsibility, but a preparation for it. Only a soul that has been able to withdraw can re-enter the world with clarity and courage. This is also why disturbances of sleep often accompany spiritual striving. When the soul awakens to deeper questions, it may temporarily disrupt the old rhythm. Steiner cautions that this should not be mistaken for progress. True spiritual development does not abolish sleep. It deepens its significance. The task is not to shorten sleep or overcome it, but to allow it to fulfill its role fully, so that waking consciousness can become more present and more free. The relationship between sleep and freedom thus reveals itself as paradoxical. Freedom does not arise from uninterrupted wakefulness or constant awareness. It arises from the capacity to alternate, to engage and withdraw, to act and to be still. Sleep trains the human being unconsciously in the art of letting go. Waking trains the human being consciously in the art of taking up responsibility. Both are necessary, and neither can replace the other. In this way, sleep and waking form a moral rhythm. They educate the I by repeatedly leading it through states of limitation and release. The soul that can surrender to sleep without fear and awaken without resistance gradually learns to trust this rhythm. Such trust becomes the basis for inner stability in a world that increasingly lacks outer order. In the final part, we will gather these insights and show how respecting the rhythm of sleep and waking can become a conscious path of soul development in modern life. When we now gather these insights into a unified picture, sleep and waking reveal themselves as one of the most intimate rhythms through which the human being is educated toward freedom. They are not merely alternating states, but complementary movements in a single process of becoming. In waking life, the human being steps into the world, accepts limitation, and allows consciousness to be shaped by the resistance of outer reality. In sleep, the human being steps back from the world, releases this resistance, and allows inner forces to restore, reorder, and quietly transform what has been experienced. Steiner emphasizes that this rhythm is not neutral. It carries ethical significance. A human being who lives only outwardly, who never truly withdraws, gradually loses depth. Experience remains on the surface and does not mature into insight. Conversely, a human being who withdraws too much, who seeks refuge from life rather than rhythmic renewal, loses contact with reality. Sleep and waking must therefore remain in living balance. One prepares the other. Only a soul that has truly slept can truly awaken. Only a soul that has truly awakened can truly fall asleep. In modern life, this balance is under constant threat. The fragmentation of daily rhythm, the intrusion of technology into night, and the continuous stimulation of the nervous system prevent the I and astral body from fully disengaging. The result is not only fatigue, but a subtle erosion of inner coherence. Steiner would say that the soul loses its breathing space. Thinking becomes restless, feeling unstable, and willing either compulsive or weak. What is lost is not energy alone, but inward orientation. To respect sleep, in the Steinerian sense, is therefore not a matter of hygiene alone. It is an act of care for the soul. It means creating conditions in which the astral body can truly withdraw and the etheric body can truly rebuild. It means allowing the night to complete its work without interference. Such care does not lead to passivity, it leads to strength. The human being who allows the night its full dignity awakens with a greater capacity to meet the world consciously. At the same time, waking must also be taken seriously. Awakening is not merely the return of consciousness. It is a daily act of incarnation. Each morning, the I must once again take hold of the bodily instrument. This act can be performed mechanically, or it can be performed with awareness. Steiner hints that the quality of awakening influences the entire day. A hurried, unconscious awakening carries the soul into the day fragmented. A calm, attentive awakening allows the I to enter the body deliberately. In this sense, awakening is a threshold that deserves reverence. Thus, sleep and waking become a daily schooling of the soul. Through sleep, the human being learns trust in the lawful activity of forces beyond conscious control. Through waking, the human being learns responsibility, the task of shaping life consciously within limits. Between these two movements, the I gradually strengthens. It learns not to cling to either state, but to move rhythmically between them. Seen in this light, the rhythm of sleep and waking is a quiet but powerful teacher. It instructs the human being in the art of balance, in the necessity of letting go and taking hold, in the patience required for inner growth. Where this rhythm is honored, the soul can develop resilience and clarity even in a chaotic world. Where it is ignored, no amount of effort can fully compensate for what is lost. Steiner's spiritual science thus invites us to rediscover sleep and waking as sacred thresholds, woven into the very structure of human existence. They are not interruptions of life, but its pulse. By learning to live consciously with this pulse, the human being lays one of the most essential foundations for health, moral strength, and spiritual awakening in the modern age.